On this episode, we travel to Memphis, Tennessee. We visit a bicycle and pedestrian path on a railroad bridge over the Mississippi River. Then we look at public space improvements in the medical district. We drop in on a meeting of the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals. Finally, we listen to the mayor's remarks at the APBP meeting. Stay tuned.
We're talking with Nick Euler, who's the Bikeway and Pedestrian Manager for the City of Memphis. What does a Bikeway and Pedestrian Manager do?
Right, so that means I oversee all the bike lane projects, greenways, green line trails, pedestrian safety improvement projects, sidewalks, crosswalks, really anything within that whole wheelhouse.
So what's Memphis been doing for bikes and peds lately?
Quite a bit. We got a lot to show off. We've made substantial progress over the last 7 years or so. So we were at a low point in 2010 when Bicycling Magazine named us the worst city for biking in the country.
Not good.
Not good at all, nope. And it was a rallying cry for the community to do better. So in 2010, we went from having 1.5 miles of bike lanes in the entire city, and we were at the time the 18th largest city in the country. And we are on track by the end of this year, 2017, to have close to 400 miles of bike lanes, bike facilities on the street.
So you've been busy.
We have been busy, yes.
So where are we standing now?
We're on the Harahan Bridge, or the Big River Crossing, as it's been rebranded. This is a bridge that was built in the early 1900s and had a wagon trail cantilevered off the side of it. It's actually what we're standing on. We've converted this into a bicycle and pedestrian shared use path that opened last October.
What did it take to make that happen?
A lot of hard work, cooperation from various entities, local governments, and states. So this bridge goes over the Mississippi River. That means it's connecting Tennessee with Arkansas, Memphis with West Memphis, different counties, different metropolitan planning organizations. So there was a lot of just intricate cooperation.
And this was an old bridge. From an engineering standpoint, were there any difficulties in putting a new bike path on an old wagon trail?
For the most part, no. Unfortunately, when this bridge was built back in the day, engineers then really over-engineered it. So the structure has been sound for all these years. The steel girders that the bridge platform rests on, the walkway rests on, were in perfect shape. So this used to be a wooden bid wagon trail, and in the 50s or so, that wooden bid caught fire and fell to the river. And ever since then, these steel girders had just been here waiting for a new use. And so when the time came to repurpose this bridge, the engineers, the contractors simply had to lay down the bridge platforms into place, and that was really it. It was fairly straightforward.
And who actually owns the bridge?
So it's an interesting story. So this is still an active railroad bridge. So past the fencing here are active railroad tracks. The tracks and that portion of the bridge are owned by the railroad company, Union Pacific. But the wagon trail that we're standing on, the bicycle pedestrian portion, is actually owned by the city of Memphis. So it's an interesting setup. It's one structure, but this portion of it was actually deeded by the railroad to the city several decades ago. And so that made it a little easier to get this project moving forward. But we still had to cooperate extensively with the railroad. For the most part, they were very supportive of the idea. They had security concerns. That's why you see the tall fencing back there, and there are security cameras along the bridge with thermal imaging for night. But for the most part, the railroad was cooperative and allowed this project to move forward.
Is that the biggest concern that the railroads have, is they just don't want people getting out on their tracks?
I think it's a safety concern, a liability one, which I think is justified. Obviously, it's a concern they have to have. And I think that as long as a local government or an entity that's trying to do a project like this can demonstrate the steps it's taking to ensure that that safety is there, that protection is there, then the railroad would be a lot easier to work with.
So the fence is a little more substantial than just your standard chain link fence. So the railroad was happy that you could come up with a secure fence design like that?
Yes, yes. So actually, there were some. It was a bit of a compromise. So the trail was intended to originally be 12 feet wide, which is more of the standard recommendation width for a shared use path, bicycle and pedestrian. In order to accommodate the railroad's requests, though, for the security measures, that the height of the fence they wanted to have, the security cameras along the route, and so on, we had to make some adjustments. So as a result, the trail is only 10 feet wide today. And that was the cost savings in order to do the security measures that the railroad wanted.
So what does this trail hook up to? You know, on the Memphis side, the Arkansas side? What am I going to find when I get off the bridge?
Sure. So on the Memphis side, it hooks up to our rapidly growing network of bicycle facilities. We have protected bike lane network under development that will cross the core of the city. It also hooks up with our Main Street in downtown Memphis. That was actually a part of this project as well. It was not just the bridge, but it was streetscaping and pedestrian safety improvements on Main Street in downtown Memphis, as well as an extent in West Memphis, Arkansas, just across the river. So on the Memphis side, it hooks up with downtown Memphis, our pedestrian network, our bicycle network. On the Arkansas side, it hooks up with a regional trail network. So you can actually get off the bridge today, get on a trail on top of a levee that stretches for 72 miles south to Marianna, Arkansas. And the city of West Memphis is also in the process of turning a lot of the land that's on the west side of the river that's actually floodplain, that has no chance of real estate development because it's seasonally floods. They're turning that into what they call an eco park. It's going to have off-road trails, dirt trails for biking, for hiking, walking, amphitheater, a nature interpretive center. So that's an amenity destination under development right at the foot of the bridge. On a larger scale and longer term, we're also working with regional partners to develop a more extensive regional network of trails that will cross across the entire metropolitan region in Memphis and Tennessee and in Arkansas. And one day that trail that I said that goes 70 miles to the south, one day that's going to go all the way south to New Orleans. And we're working on the other direction north to St. Louis. And this bridge will be the key connecting point across the river for this interstate bicycle trail.
Quite an ambitious plan. Trails on the bridge here is still fairly new. Have people in Memphis discovered it, or are they out here using it now?
Yes, absolutely. So we have bicycle and pedestrian automatic counters on either end of the bridge, so we can count how many people are using it on a daily, hourly basis, and we can differentiate between bicyclists and pedestrians. And the numbers far surpass our expectations. So the bridge opened last October, so it's been less than 10 months since it opened, and we have already seen, I think we're approaching 300,000 people in total have used it since then. Every time I come out here, I am surprised and impressed to see people using the bridge at all hours of the day, whether it's early morning, lunchtime, evening, weekday, weekend, and it's all kinds of people as well. It's a very diverse crowd, so it's not just the joggers, the runners. You'll see people out here in their regular business clothes. Perhaps they're on a lunch break and they want to just get outside for a bit since we are so close to downtown and the offices. And it's also very representative of the population of Memphis. So if you look at the neighborhood that's immediately adjacent to the bridge on the Memphis side, the east side, that neighborhood is predominantly white, and yet the users on the bridge many times are more a good mix of white, African American, Hispanic. So that tells me that people are coming from around Memphis, from different neighborhoods. They're coming to this bridge, whether it's on foot, on bike, or in a car even, and using it. So it has a regional draw. So yes, Memphians have discovered it and are using it.
Now, does that make your job a little easier when you're trying to sell ped and bike infrastructure in the city, that you can look at a success like this and say, people do want this?
It helps, certainly, yes. It certainly helps to have that landmark project that you can point to that many would have said, oh, that's going to be a failure, it's not going to work. And then there were people like that with this project. But to demonstrate that it has been successful, that people are using it, it shows that there's a demand for better, safer, more convenient pedestrian and bicycle facilities. In some ways, I would say this bridge has normalized walking in Memphis. So Memphis is a very sprawled, car-dependent city, like many other large southern cities. So it's a city where walking is often a means of last resort for transportation. But as I was saying, with people on this bridge, you see them wearing all kinds of clothes, not just athletic, jogging clothes, but business clothes, casual clothes. And in some ways, I feel that has this image of seeing people in everyday clothing walking normalizes it to an extent. So I think it's helped.
We're in Memphis, Tennessee, talking with Dane Forlines. Who do you work for?
I'm with the Memphis Medical District Collaborative.
And what's the collaborative?
We're a community development corporation, nonprofit, that was formed by 8 of the healthcare and educational institutions in the medical district.
And what sort of things do you do? I mean, why were you created?
We were we were created to elevate the quality of life in the medical district, and so we do that by addressing 4 portfolio areas. We work in safety and security, in community development, programming and marketing, and in public space. I
assume the intersection behind us fits into that public space realm. What's going on here?
Yeah, so I manage our public space portfolio, and when we were created, we wanted to elevate the safety and function of public spaces in the medical district, and so we reached out to Looney Rick's KISS Architecture and Alta Planning and Design, and through a community process that engaged the area stakeholders, we created what we call a Streetscapes Playbook. And so in the playbook, we identified nearly 40 locations in the medical district where we wanted to improve the public space and improve pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular infrastructure. And so we're in year 2 now of implementing the playbook. We take about 6 or 8 of those locations each year, and hopefully within 3 to 5 years we'll have fully implemented the playbook.
This particular intersection we're at, what was it like before you got started? Why was there an opportunity here?
One of the challenges that we were attempting to address through the playbook is we know that typical public space improvements have a long design timeline and then a high capital cost for implementation. And we're also aware of tactical approaches to public space improvements where the community will come together for a day or a weekend and put down some temporary paint and pallet furniture and basically cast the vision for what the neighborhood wants to see. Well, the playbook is an attempt to capture that middle ground. It's not the 50-year, multi-million-dollar approach, and it's not the one weekend $500 approach, but it's something in the middle. So our designs are intended to last about 7 to 10 years, so we use more durable materials, and we use design approaches that don't don't affect stormwater flows and don't require changes in curbs and gutters. So that allows us to address all 40 of these areas in the playbook in a relatively short amount of time with a modest budget. And here at this intersection, previously it was all vehicular infrastructure. The intersection is unique in that it's formed by a diagonal cross street. So that created a large area of asphalt in the middle of the intersection, and it was all for vehicular use. And so that also provided opportunities for us, since there was excess capacity, to take some of that away and humanize it for bicycle and pedestrian use.
So right behind us here, we've got a textured surface, some little chairs, bike racks. Well, tell us what's all here.
Yeah, so some of the design elements we used to create the plaza areas, we wanted to differentiate the surface texture from the roadway to signal to all users that this was a different space. And we didn't want to use paint because paint typically breaks down after 1 to 2 years. We wanted to use something a little bit more durable. And so we learned from other places, particularly New York City, in the use of epoxy gravel. So it's actually a crushed marble that's mixed with an epoxy material in a cement mixture and troweled down on the surface. And that can follow any kind of form shape. So we took the styrofoam strips to create a form and delineate these bulb out areas, and then applied the epoxy gravel in that. And then instead of using curbs, we used ceramic traffic dome markers to delineate the space. And then we wanted to soften the edge by using some natural elements. So we set out these large planters with landscaping to add an additional buffer, but also to kind of soften that edge. So those are some of the main features.
Is this typical of the toolbox you have for the 40 intersections you're looking at, or they all going to have an approach similar to this, or you have other things, surprises you're going to pull out of your hat?
Well, one of the themes in the playbook is to look for those low-hanging fruit opportunities. And so with a modest budget, but with medium to long range in mind, we wanted to choose designs and materials to achieve a dramatic effect in a shorter amount of time. So that's kind of the essence of the playbook. The next round of intersections that we're going to be implementing this year, we're going to include a lot more sort of artistic elements in that. So the crosswalks are going to be more artistic crosswalks. We're looking for opportunities to maybe enhance the design of the epoxy gravel, integrating other types of materials to make it a little bit more aesthetically interesting. Art is something that we identified as important to integrate into our streetscape work, and we're going to explore those opportunities further in the next round and in the years going forward.
We're in Memphis, Tennessee, talking with Byron Rushing, who's president of the board of the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals, or APBP. Just what is APBP?
Hi, John. Thank you. So the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals is a professional or trade association that was founded by state and city bike and ped coordinators in the 90s to share knowledge, exchange ideas, and kind of advance the thought leadership and field around public sector bicycle and pedestrian work.
And what sort of services do you provide your members?
We have a lot of opportunities mainly around information sharing and knowledge exchange. We do a number of things. We host an email listserv. We have monthly webinars with professional topics. We do events like the Professional Development Seminar here in Memphis this week to bring professionals together and help them exchange ideas, learn from peers, and show off the great work that they're doing in their cities all around the country.
And you mentioned your Professional Development Seminar here in Memphis. What is that? What's been going on this week?
So we have brought in 200 professionals from all around the country, different cities, states, private consulting firms, to come to Memphis. And first and foremost is to learn from Memphis. Memphis is doing such exciting work right now that we wanted to bring people here to show them what a city like Memphis is doing. But then also during our sessions in the conference portion, to trade ideas with each other, learn from experts, and really have discussions about what they can be doing and taking back to their cities to be making their cities more walk and bike friendly.
What is Memphis doing that caught your eye?
So there's a couple of things. One, it's a medium-sized southern city, a place we don't traditionally think of as being on the forefront of walking and bicycling stuff. But Memphis, starting about a decade ago, really had citizens that took it upon themselves to push the city into saying, how can we make walking safer, more convenient? How can we make Memphis more livable and really improve the quality of life here in the city? And then a lot of bicycling conversations around that. So Memphis has really taken it upon itself to reinvent itself, and not necessarily around transportation or walking and bicycling, but reinvent itself as a regional center for this part of Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. And they have really taken walking and bicycling as part of that to say, we can't be a great city if we don't have good walking and bicycling. So some of the neat things they have done is we got to go last night to a street party around a demonstration project for a few blocks of a new protected two-way bike lane. So they repaved the street and painted this bike lane right in time for the conference. So we went out and had a conference around that and have been touring around the city and looking at all the other great stuff that they've been doing.
So people, you have one more day to go and people head home. They go to work on Monday morning. What are they going to have gotten out of this week that they'll be able to put to work?
So hopefully a lot, but I think first and foremost it is networking and friendship. So they have somebody who's doing interesting work in a city like theirs or a community like theirs that they can call. They have a face, they have a business card. When they have a question coming up on Monday or next week or next year, they know who to call to get an answer for that. Second, they're plugged into the APBP community. We think of it as like a family, peers that are separated in different cities all around the country. So they know to call us, they know to join the listserv. And then, third, the amount of good information that's being shared is really astounding. This has been one of the best years we've been doing this. We've been doing it for well over a decade and almost more than that. So, taking the guidebooks home, taking the PowerPoint slides home, taking the ideas home. We had a chance to talk to the Federal Highway Administration and their staff that were here earlier in the week. So taking those resources that are being developed around the country at the national level and take them back home, put them on their desk, start referencing them, and start rebuilding this kind of stuff in their city.
What do you see as the future for APBP? It's still a fairly young organization. Where would you like to see it go over the next decade?
Yeah, so we're just about 20 years old, which I think is still a bit young, and we need to be thinking through how do we grow in the future. The great thing is when we started in the early 90s, it was out of a conversation of the need of state bike and ped coordinators and city staff who said, we need that information sharing, we need that idea sharing around the country. And really, I think so much of the thought leadership has matured to this point that we say, we have great guidebooks, we have great information. Any city can tap into this kind of information at this point. So we really need to think through how are we continuing to connect people, trade ideas, share ideas, but also really start to push the limits of what we as professionals can do, support great research at the national level, support great projects at the local level, including demonstrations and pop-ups and temporary stuff that people are really excited about right now, but then really continue to foster that community of people, young professionals, when they come into the field, they have a home that they can come into and learn from knowledgeable people, and knowledgeable people feel like they can help move their career forward using the tools and resources of their peers.
Memphis is a city that's changed the world. We are the home of the blues, and I hope no one's from Cleveland, Ohio here, but we are the birthplace of rock and roll. I don't care where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is, but it was rock and roll was birthed on Union Avenue, a couple of miles east of here at Sun Studios. We perfected overnight package delivery to the point that the name of the company is now a verb. I got to FedEx something to Los Angeles. How many companies become a verb? We created chain hotels and Holiday Inn. We created self-service grocery stores in Piggly Wiggly. But best of all, every single day, we are treating and curing childhood cancer about 2 miles north of here at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. So we are a city that's changed the world. But I also think we're a city that's helped change the whole bike pedestrian effort. And I'm very proud to have continued the efforts from my predecessor in showing that and continuing that commitment. The pilot project that you talked about is a really cool effort. I hope that everyone's seen it. And I suspect it's going to be very popular and that we can grow that program more and more. But I tell people that by looking at me, you can realize I'm not a bike rider. But I still support the infrastructure. And I support it for two main reasons. Number one, safety. We have way too many pedestrian fatalities in Memphis. And in the year and a half I've been mayor and reading up on it, I don't think we're the only city that has that challenge. We need to care about the safety of all people using the streets. And secondly, economic development. We are in a battle with all your cities for employers and jobs. And one example is literally next door. They're working on the headquarters next door for ServiceMaster, a Fortune 1000 company based in Memphis. And they seriously were thinking about leaving about 13, 14 months ago. And they're closer to the suburbs right now. And what they were looking for is a city where they can recruit the best and brightest young people this country has to offer. So we were very excited when they decided to stay in Memphis. Even more excited when they decided to move downtown and renovate an old mall, retail mall. But I think one of the reasons they did that because they thought that they could recruit the best and brightest young people that this city, or that this country has to offer. And I think our commitment to bike and pedestrian safety and encouraging that is one of the reasons they stay. And we will always be focused on the core basic services of government. It's our number one priority. But public safety, part of public safety is the safety of everyone who uses our streets.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.